You weren't the one they picked, not because you weren't enough, but because you were too much of yourself to be owned. Every time you showed up, every time you stayed when others left, you caught yourself waiting, not for applause, but for invitation. Loyalty, you learned the hard way, isn't a ticket into their inner circle. It's a mirror reflecting your own resolve, a steel test forged in the silence after the door closed. You gave everything you had, the kind of commitment that would bend lesser men into shadows. But they needed something lighter, less weight, a version of you easier to hold without breaking a sweat. I gave everything. She needed something else. That isn't just a line, it's the flicker of flame below your ribs, the quiet rage that knows the difference between being seen and being chosen. You believed loyalty meant being prized, but the truth is darker and more honest. It often means being used as the ground beneath their footsteps, invisible to the eyes that only seek the shimmer. You've been the wolf standing firm in a storm, but instead of the pack gathering around you, you were left alone in the cold, howling at a moon that keeps turning away. And yet, inside that emptiness, that silence where no one noticed your scars or counted your breaths, the chance was born, not to rewrite their story, but to build your own. You don't rise because someone finally handed you the crown. You rise because you became the unbreakable steel they refused to craft into a throne. This isn't about their rejection. It's the relentless heartbeat of your own freedom. Loyalty doesn't guarantee selection, but it guarantees clarity. It separates the wolves from the shadows. You walked through hell and never raised your voice. You don't need the world to choose you. You choose yourself again and again in the dark, and that is where true power lives. You were told to open up, to lay your soul bare like steel forged in the fire, to be vulnerable, to share your pain, to be emotionally available. So you did. You peeled back the layers, showed the cracks, exposed the dark places you keep locked away from the world. And yet, instead of respect, you were met with silence that stung deeper than any blade. Why does loyalty, your fiercest armor, make you invisible? Why does giving yourself fully feel like handing your weapon to a stranger, only to have it tossed aside in the dust? Loyalty isn't honored. It's an unspoken expectation, a ghost that follows you into rooms where you're barely acknowledged. You've stood in the storm, faithful and solid, only to find that faith mistaken for weakness, or worse, something to be walked over. You dig your hands into that loss, fold it into yourself, and wonder if anyone even saw the weight you carried. Did anyone really see you, or just the empty space where you stood? This world trains you to be open, to hold nothing back, but throws you into the arena as if that openness were a flaw, a crack in your armor, rather than the steel beneath it. So here you are, bearing the scars of loyalty, bruised by the careful calculus of respect, trying to find footing in a place that doesn't honor the man behind the mask. The battlefield hasn't shifted. You bleed the same. Only now you realize it's not just wounds you carry, it's the silence that follows, louder than any battle cry. The truth is this: the arena rewards neither your honesty nor your heart. It rewards power wrapped in silence, strength that doesn't ask for permission. So why keep exposing yourself to a world that can't, or won't, see the man who stands unwavering beneath it? Because the quiet fire inside still burns. Because you don't need their validation to be the wolf in the distance, howling at a sky that doesn't hear but never forgets. You have learned this. Your vulnerability is not a currency to trade for respect. It's the steel forged in your soul, tempered by disappointment, carved by the loneliness that only men who walk through fire know. They might not see you in the moment. They might never say your name, but that doesn't make your truth any less real. Loyalty is not invisibility. It is the silent strength of a man who stands even when the world looks away, and that's a power no one can take. You think rejection breaks you down like a storm tearing at your bones, but what if it's not the wind that weakens the oak? but the oak's own resistance to bending. The storm-tested oak doesn't shatter or flee. It leans into the gusts, muscles of grain and root tightening with every gale. It doesn't ask why the wind hates it. It simply learns how to stand. The truth you haven't faced is that every slash of disrespect, every door slammed in your face, is only a reflection of the expectations you've placed on others. Expectations that bind you like chains. When you stop hoping the world will honor your worth, you stop giving it power over your peace. A friend I know once spun himself in endless circles, chasing validation like a dog chasing cars it would never catch. Until one day, tired and hollow, he folded his hands and looked inward. He stopped running after their approval and started carving a path through his silence, shaping his identity like a river finessing its own channel through jagged earth. No longer a desperate shadow, he became a fortress carved from stone, dense, quiet, unyielding. That's the Stoic paradox. Rejection is not your weakness, but your teacher. It is the mirror that shows you where you still clutch what you cannot control. Let that refusal to chase be the hammer that forges your roots deeper. Stand quieter in the storm. The world won't soften its blows, but you will grow tougher by how you meet them. A man who can't be shaken by the outside is not unfeeling. He is alive in a way a scream in the wind never is. Alive with the knowledge that true strength feels nothing outside itself. The oak doesn't sway because the wind is strong. It bends because it is built to endure. So be the storm-tested oak. Let rejection be the fire that steams your grain, the frost that makes your core denser. You walk through hell and never raised your voice, not because you had to prove a point, but because you already knew you stood unbent. The world's storms don't define you. You've always been the one to define how you stand through them. You don't need their approval. That truth burrows deep, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your mind reel when no one's watching. Your value isn't a reflection in someone else's cracked mirror. It's steel forged inside you, hammered by your own will. Detachment is the archer's release. You let go of the arrow, knowing it flies true without gripping the bowstring until your fingers bleed. Hold your center like iron, steady and unflinching, and watch how the world bends around your quiet certainty. When you stop chasing the noise of others' opinions, the silence inside sharpens into an edge of clarity you didn't think was possible. You become unmovable, anchored in a purpose no outside force can shake. Emotional control is the reservoir beneath the frozen surface. To the world, you may seem cold, distant, a calm so deep it's almost unnerving. But underneath, the current never stops. It flows with intention, carrying you forward through storms no man can see. That silent strength is your shield. It keeps the tremors of judgment, the stinging fires of insult, from cracking your foundation. When you master your emotions, you don't just survive the hits. You absorb them and redirect their energy without losing an ounce of your own calm. You become the river cutting through stone, relentless but composed, never flinching from the cold wind that bites. Keep your mission before all else. Let distractions fall away like dead leaves in the wind. Your life needs a purpose carved so deeply into your bones, it guides every breath you take. Like a lighthouse standing alone against the night, you hold your ground, no matter how thick the fog of doubt or the crashing waves of confusion. Your mission is the silent command center you return to when chaos looms. It's the unbreakable reason that refuses to be drowned out by every passing distraction or setback. This is how men move forward, not by chasing fleeting approval, but by being the master of their own direction. Respect the silence, not emptiness, but a fortress. Your inward sanctuary where raw potential gathers unseen and unshackled. The world demands noise, but silence is where strength is carved sharpest. Let the quiet be your weapon and your shield. In silence, your thoughts sharpen, your spirit steadies, and the lies of weakness fall away. You don't need to prove yourself in loud declarations. Instead, let your silence speak volumes that the restless world can't drown out. This quiet power guards your growth. It's the soil fertile for the strongest roots and the fiercest resolve. Finally, embrace self-reliance as your birthright. Your identity isn't built on the shifting sands of acceptance or the fleeting nod of some distant judge. It's carved by your relentless journey, the miles traveled, the losses endured, the battles fought alone. When you stand untethered from others' validation, you become an untamed force of nature. Each step you take leans into your own principles. Each breath affirms your sovereignty. You become not a man shaped by others, but a man who shapes himself, unyielding, resolute, unbreakable. That is the forge of the real masculine spirit. You are no longer a shadow cast by doubts or the echo of someone else's neglect. That old version of you, the one who waited for a sign or needed permission to stand tall, is gone. Burned away like steel, forged hard and reshaped under a blackout sky. You don't carry their rejection in your shoulders, their disrespect in your jaw, or their expectations like an iron yoke dragging you down. You carry yourself differently now. There is a new weight, but it is the weight of purpose, not burden. A quiet knowing that you chose yourself when the world tried to cast you aside. This identity you wear isn't light, but it is unbreakable. It's the kind of strength born in silence, in the hours when no one's looking, when the storm inside you didn't have a voice but kept burning anyway. You emerged from that fire not as a man who bends to the will of others, but as a warrior who crafts his own path, measuring each step in resolve, not in need. I lead in silence. Let those words settle like the calm after a storm, deep and steady, echoing through the silence you've built around yourself like walls of stone. You walked through hell and never raised your voice. You don't need to explain the distance you put between yourself and your past, because the man who stands before you now is enough, solid, complete, and relentless. This journey was never about proving something to them. It was always about becoming something undeniable in your own right. Keep moving forward, not out of anger or longing, but with the clarity of a wolf who knows his own strength and the long horizon he hunts toward. Detachment is your shield. Silence is your sword. And self-reliance is the armor no one can strip away. This is your forge. This is your watchtower. This is the man you forged in the flames where others saw only ashes.